I stood in the middle of an abandoned gas station, cell service dead, sun sinking, and one thought on repeat in my head. He really left me here. No note, no goodbye. Just a text that said, "Need space. I'll be back soon." But soon never came, and neither did he. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. His idea. "Let's unplug," he said. "Just you and me, like old times." So I packed light, wore my softest sweater, and clung to the sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was a turning point. Instead, he dropped me off in what looked like the set of a horror film and drove off like it was a grocery run. The town had 4 buildings, 2 tumbleweeds, and one old man who watched me with pity from his porch. At first, I waited, checked my phone every few minutes, walked circles around the empty inn we were supposed to stay in. I told myself he was picking up food, that there was a detour, that he'd return with some sweet, quirky story and an apology. But hours passed. The sun dipped behind the mountains, and my love turned into rage. I stopped pacing, stopped hoping, and started remembering. Remembering the way he flinched every time I said, "Therapy." The way his eyes wandered when I talked. The way his touch had become something rare and reluctant. I sat on a splintered bench and replayed our last few weeks, how he blamed work for his silence, how he slept facing the opposite wall, how he rolled his eyes when I cried after finding a lipstick that wasn't mine in the glove box. He called me dramatic, said I was always looking for problems. But now I was standing in a ghost town, abandoned like some unwanted object, and all I could feel was this boiling clarity rising in my throat. I wasn't dramatic. I was right. And he had no idea what I was capable of. Not yet, because I wasn't going to cry this time. I was going to follow the trail he thought he'd buried, and burn it in heels he'd never forget. Mark wasn't always like this. Or maybe he was. And I just mistook indifference for mystery. When we first met, he was magnetic, charming in that lazy, effortless way that made me feel like I was the most interesting woman in any room. He listened, nodded, asked questions that made me feel seen. We fell hard, fast, the kind of love that made your chest ache. He called me his storm, said I stirred him in ways no one else ever had. And for a while I believed him. Because when someone names you poetry, it takes a long time to realize you're actually being written off. We got married in a garden. Just 30 people, candles in mason jars, and a promise that we'd never become one of those couples. The kind who stopped trying. The kind who stopped choosing each other. But time is funny. It erodes the loud parts and magnifies the silences. He started working more, talking less, touching me like I was something to be tolerated, not wanted. I chalked it up to stress, to routine, to life. I stopped wearing the perfume he loved, stopped leaving notes in his jacket pocket. You only write to someone who reads you. I suggested we go away, reconnect, remember. He said he was too busy. Then, out of nowhere, he suggested the trip. I cried when he told me. Stupid, hopeful tears. "Maybe he wants to fix this," I whispered to Elena, my best friend. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Or maybe he just wants something to leave behind." I ignored her. Because you have to sometimes when you're trying to keep something whole. I packed the red heels, the ones he used to love, the ones he once said made me look unapologetically dangerous. I told myself I'd wear them when things felt right again. But nothing felt right from the moment we arrived. The town was eerie, empty. Mark was distracted, on edge. He said he needed to grab something from the other side of the valley. Kissed my cheek and told me to relax. I watched his car disappear into dust and silence. I waited. Hours. Now I sit here, remembering everything I tried to forget. Every dinner where I ate alone. Every eye roll. every apology that felt like a dismissal. And all I can think is, this is what love looks like when it dies slowly. Then suddenly, all at once. He didn't come here to fix us. He came here to leave me. And now I was done being the quiet, patient wife who waits for someone to come back. I was going to find him. But I wasn't going as the woman he abandoned. I was going as the woman he underestimated. The signs had been there all along, breadcrumbs of contempt trailing behind him, subtle but sharp. He stopped calling me babe months ago. It was just my name now. Cold, functional, like a reminder that affection was conditional, and I had fallen out of favor. He started taking calls in other rooms, whispering, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in years. When I asked who it was, he always answered with a shrug. Just work. You wouldn't know her. That slip, her, stuck with me like a splinter under the skin. He changed his passwords, put a lock on his phone, turned off notifications. He said he was protecting our privacy, but nothing about it felt like protection. It felt like exclusion. And exclusion, I've learned, is just a slow way of being erased. I once found a necklace in the glove box, a dainty silver chain I'd never seen. He said it was for me. A surprise. But he looked away when he said it. And later, when I asked about it again, he claimed he didn't know what I was talking about. Gaslighting. Textbook. He became irritated by my presence, my voice, my questions, my breath in the room. He'd say things like, "You're exhausting," or, "Can you not do that right now?" As if my mere existence disrupted his peace. I started walking quieter, speaking softer, shrinking. He stopped noticing when I wore makeup, or when I didn't. Compliments disappeared. Criticism didn't. You look tired. That dress used to fit differently. I laughed it off, but inside I felt like I was fading out of the frame of my own life. When he suggested the trip, I was suspicious, but desperate hope does strange things. I wanted to believe he was trying, that maybe this was his version of an olive branch. But even in the car, his tone was clipped. His gaze rarely met mine. He texted the whole way. We stopped once for gas. I tried to hold his hand. He pulled away to grab his wallet. "Don't make this a thing," he said. Like touch was now an accusation. I smiled, nodded, died a little more inside. That night, in the ghost town, as the wind whistled through cracked windows and abandoned storefronts, I realized I wasn't in a marriage anymore. I was in a hostage situation with someone who had already escaped. He'd been leaving me for months. Now he'd just made it literal. And the only question left was, where did he go? By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the ghost town was colder, darker. I sat on the porch of the empty inn, arms wrapped around myself, phone clenched in my hand like it might wake up if I held it hard enough. But still, no signal. No message. No him. I wandered toward the only lit building, a tiny general store that looked like it hadn't restocked since the 90s. An old man behind the counter looked up, saw my face, and said, "You the one waitin' for that dark-haired fellow with the new Jeep?" My stomach dropped. "Yeah," I said, voice tight. He nodded slowly, like he'd seen this kind of story before. He came in earlier, bought 2 bottles of wine, said he was headed over to Elridge Lake. Fancy cabins out that way. Real private. Didn't respond. Couldn't. He tilted his head. "You okay, miss?" I smiled. Bitter. Tight. "No, but I will be." I walked back to the inn with numb legs and burning eyes. Elridge Lake was 15 minutes away, 20 if you drove slow. And now I knew. He hadn't left me to clear his head. He hadn't gotten lost. He had driven straight to someone else. I imagined it all too easily. Candles, wine, her laugh. His hands on her waist. His lies told in a lower voice. Maybe she thought she was special. Maybe he told her I didn't understand him. That I was crazy. Too much. Not enough. I thought about the red heels. Still packed in the bag. Still waiting for something right. I stood up, walked into the inn, and pulled out my dress. The one I hadn't worn since our anniversary 2 years ago. It still fit. Barely. My reflection looked like a ghost, but sharper, braver, more dangerous. I slipped on the heels, red, loud, defiant. And as I painted my lips the same shade, one thought pulsed through me like a drum. If he wanted a performance, I'd give him one. Because he didn't just abandon me, he underestimated me, and now I was going to crash their fantasy, with fire in my chest and vengeance on my heels. Driving to Elridge Lake felt like navigating through every lie he ever told me. Each turn, each mile, was lined with memories I didn't ask for. Birthdays forgotten, arguments unresolved, touches that lingered just long enough to pacify, never to heal. The headlights cut through the dark like truth through denial. I didn't blast music. I didn't scream. I just drove, white-knuckled, heart pounding like a war drum. The GPS flickered back to life just in time to show me the gravel, path leading to the cabins. The first sign I saw read, "Couples escape. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just connection." I almost laughed. My red heels clicked on the stones like warning shots. My reflection in the window of the rental car looked unrecognizable. Eyes like steel, jaw set with purpose. I wasn't here to plead. I was here to end something that should have died long ago. I spotted their cabin easily. The glow of candles flickered through the windows. Wine glasses on the table. Shadows dancing. I stood outside for a full minute, letting the rage settle into something more surgical. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I would cut. I walked, up the wooden steps slowly, heels echoing like a countdown. I didn't knock. I opened the door. Mark froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Riley turned wide-eyed, the picture of startled innocence. Her hand still rested on his. The wine bottle was one I helped him pick on our 5th anniversary. For a second, no one breathed. Then I smiled. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, voice velvet. "But I couldn't let you miss dessert." Mark stood abruptly. "What are you doing here?" Like I was the one out of line. Like I was the ghost invading their fantasy. I took a slow step forward. "You left me, in a ghost town, with no phone, no car, and a promise to be right back." I turned to Riley. How romantic. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "Don't. You're not the first. Probably not the last. But you're definitely the one who gets to see this part." I placed the hotel room key, the one he never used, on the table beside the wine. This was supposed to be ours. Mark stammered. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said, eyes locked on his. "But I didn't come for explanations. I came to say goodbye, in person, in heels, with witnesses." Then I turned and walked out. Because the collapse had already happened. I just made sure he watched it burn. Back at the inn, I didn't collapse. I didn't replay what I'd said, or wonder if I'd gone too far. I poured a glass of water, kicked off my red heels, and sat by the dusty fireplace, like I was finally back in my own skin. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't confused, I was certain. Still, closure is a curious thing. Even after confrontation, the mind craves answers. Why did he bring me here at all? Why not just end it? Why trap me in a ghost town while he played lover in the woods? So I opened my laptop. The inn's Wi-Fi was weak, but strong enough. I logged into our shared account, the one he forgot I still had access to. I traced his recent charges. Wine, store, cabin rental, jewelry boutique, dinner reservations, a booking for a reconnection couples massage. The lie was curated. I found emails too, one to Riley. She thinks this trip is about us. I'll drop her off in the morning. Meet me at the cabin by 2. The timestamp was from the night before we left. He had never intended to spend a single night with me. I read his words and didn't flinch, because now I had evidence, not just of betrayal, but of cruelty. Of design. He hadn't slipped into an affair. He orchestrated my abandonment, used it as a way to clear space for his affair. The ghost town wasn't accidental. It was his strategy. I screenshotted everything, compiled it into a folder. Not because I wanted revenge in court, but because I refused to let him rewrite this story later. Gaslighters always try to edit the ending. I was saving receipts. I sent one email to Elena. Subject line: You were right. Inside, the screenshots. The truth. No commentary. Just the raw, ugly facts. She replied within minutes. You didn't deserve it, but you handled it like fire. I'm proud of you. Let's talk next. Steps when you get home. I smiled for the first time in days, because the investigation was over. The facts were clear. The story wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about escape. And I wasn't just the victim. I was the witness, the narrator, and now finally the one turning the page. I didn't block Mark's number right away. I let him squirm in the silence, send frantic texts that piled up like unpaid bills. Where are you? We need to talk. You embarrassed me. That one made me laugh. Embarrassed him. As if betrayal only stung when it was witnessed. 3 days after the dinner, I agreed to meet. Neutral place. Daylight. No emotion left in my bones. I wore the red heels again. Not for him, but for me. Because they had become my armor. A reminder that I could walk through fire and still leave footprints. He was already at the cafe when I arrived, fidgeting with a coffee cup like it might offer forgiveness. His eyes scanned me like a stranger he once knew. And maybe that's all I was now. A version of me he'd never expected to rise from the ashes. He started talking before. I sat down. Excuses. It was a mistake. I was confused. You pushed me away. The greatest hits of the guilty. I listened, sipping water slowly, letting the silence stretch so he could hear how hollow his words were. When he finally paused, I placed the folder on the table. Printed, labeled, crisp. I slid it toward him. This is what I found. This is what you planned. This is who you are. He opened it, scanned the screenshots, paled. You went through my stuff? I tilted my head. You abandoned your wife in a dead town and lied about a candlelit affair. Don't moralize me. He started to reach across the table. We can fix this. I pulled my hand back. No, you can live with it. I'm done fixing things I didn't break. I stood. He followed. So that's it? You're just walking away? I smiled. I'm not walking away. I'm walking home. You're the one who left. He looked stunned, as if power had always been his currency, and I'd just emptied the account. I turned and walked out, heels clicking like punctuation marks at the end of a long, painful chapter. The justice wasn't in the documents. It wasn't even in the confrontation. It was in knowing I could finally leave without looking back. The first morning back in my apartment, I lit a candle. Not for romance, not for memory, but for cleansing. I opened every window. Let the air move through the space like it was clearing out more than dust, like it was chasing out the woman who waited too long. I took off my wedding ring and placed it in a drawer, not because I was bitter, but because it didn't belong to the woman I was becoming. That version of me, the one who begged in silence, who planned around his moods, who shrunk herself to be chosen, was gone. I called Elena. We had brunch, laughed too loud, drank champagne before noon. She raised her glass and said, "To Red, heels and burning exits." And we clinked, because sometimes survival deserves a toast. I started journaling again, writing truths that I used to bury. I let the words be ugly, raw, unfiltered. They weren't for him. They weren't even for healing. They were for remembering, because forgetting what I endured would only invite it back. I changed the locks, the Wi-Fi password, the sheets. I bought a mirror that made me feel tall, painted one wall the exact shade of defiance. I put the heels on display in my closet, next to a note that read, "Don't ever dim again." People asked questions. Friends. Family. I didn't give them the whole story. Just said, "He left me in a ghost town. I found myself there." That was enough. Those who knew, knew. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head, the way he'd say, "You're being dramatic," or "Don't make a scene." And then I remember how quiet I was when I crashed their dinner, how poised, how devastatingly honest. I wasn't dramatic. I was precise. Now when I walk down the street, I hold my head higher, not because I'm trying to be seen, but because I finally see myself. The woman who survived abandonment, who turned humiliation into transformation. Mark taught me something he never meant to. That losing someone who never saw you isn't a loss, it's freedom. And if healing has a sound, it's the click of red heels walking away without apology.